Serious, people of Reddit that honestly believe they have been abducted by aliens. What was your experience like? I was home alone in this little house I lived in the middle of nowhere. It was probably around 2 AM and I was just listening to music, enjoying having the place to myself for a change. When all of a sudden my dogs started going crazy. Normally, when someone pulls in the driveway or comes up to the back door, they go to the door, they heard the noise beyond and peek through the blinds to see who it is. But this night they are running all around the house from door to door, barking louder than they ever do. When I stood up to go see what the hell they were on about, I noticed that the whole house seemed to be lit up with a deep blue light, turning into the living room. It became obvious that it was emanating in from each window. I put on my shoes to go outside and see who was out there. But by the time I got out there, the light had faded away. There was no sound of a car engine or really anything. And where I lived you could hear a car coming from a mile away. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I had the weirdest sense of fight or flight where neither option seemed viable. Like I was frozen to the spot. I wanted to turn around and get back inside. And then, I just was. Right back in the chair I was listening to music in. As if I just blinked and there I was. Don't really like telling people about it because it skeeves me out so bad. I'm not sure if I'd say I was abducted, but what happened was really weird. Was laying on my couch with a blanket over me and I look at the clock and it says like 11:23 AM or something. Suddenly a white flash happens and it's 12:40 PM. It happens again 3 more times and by the time I could comprehend what was going on it was like 5:30 PM. Every time it would happen there would be like 15 minutes of confusion and trying to move. I was stuck in a dream-like state until it stopped happening. Edit, old F. But rereading this I remembered that the only reason I said I was laying under a blanket is because at the very end, once I was able to stand up I was on top of it. About 20 years ago I was walking home from the shops with my dad and we stopped to watch some really odd lights in the sky. There were 2 lights, slightly bigger than the stars, zooming around and orbiting each other, making figure 8 etc. And then they stopped moving. Got bigger and bigger until bright light filled the sky and then they were gone. We carried on our journey home. We hadn't stopped for more than 5 minutes. The whole journey should have been 20 minutes. When we got home, my mum was freaking out. We had been gone for 65 minutes. Our watches were both still working but were 45 minutes behind every clock in the house. She had neighbors' friends about looking for us. I don't know what happened to us or what we saw. Maybe nothing. Edit, there was no search party organized. I did myself badly. My mother simply had nearby neighbors and friends who had lived on near our route home checking to see if they had seen or could see us because it was winter with freezing temperatures outside. It was a dark country road we were walking home along and I was only 8 years old. We also didn't have mobile phones yet and weren't prone to detouring. I really don't know if I was abducted or not, but I witnessed something pretty unexplainable. My ex and I were driving out of my suburban neighborhood super late one night on the way to go eat Waffle House or something. As we're nearing the exit to my neighborhood I look up into the sky and we both notice these 3 really strange orange lights in a triangle formation. We then stop the car in the middle of the road to figure out WTF we're looking at. These lights didn't have the quality of lights you see emitting from a plane or a star. When you look at stars, they are so far away that they almost seem 2D. But these lights felt 3D somehow. These lights were much bigger and seemed closer. Like high enough into the sky to be well above the trees but not above the clouds. And they were just floating there, not moving up, down, left, or right, but eerily still. I really don't know how to explain how still these things were, but it was unnatural and I know that sounds stupid, but that's how it felt when I saw them and I wish I could explain it better. But when I saw this, I was both mesmerized and sort of in shock. I've always been a UFO enthusiast and I've always wanted to see something bizarre like this, and finally it was happening. I couldn't take my eyes off of what I was looking at and I feel like I didn't for like an hour. I really don't know how much time passed, but it really did feel like an unnatural amount of time. Finally, these globes of light just abruptly dissolved away. Kind of like they were sucked into a black hole or something. We break our gaze and look at each other, and my ex asks me if I just saw what she saw. And yeah, we couldn't come up with an explanation at all. To this day, no one believes me, and I don't care. I saw what I saw, and I'm now fully confident we're not alone. Was at a friend's cabin one night with 5-6 friends. Was late at night and we were all hypnotized for about 15-20 minutes looking at these 3 dancing lights above the hill across the lake. Then a shooting star went across the sky and it lit everything up almost as bright as day. We all ran into the cabin. When looking back at it, I get a strange feeling thinking of how we don't have much memories to recollect after we went inside. Deciding to just fall asleep right away instead of talking about what we just saw. Some of my friends' old friends get upset if I bring up what we saw, let alone our actions after. Edit. We reading the title of the post. It's saying that people who honestly believe they have been abducted. I can't say I believe me or any of my friends were abducted. What I know is the details I mentioned. After seeing those lights, I did lots of research on UFOs and stuff for the next few years. I did not think about being abducted then either, lol. Do I find it strange we all went to sleep quickly after we went inside? Yes, I do. However, there wasn't any overwhelming evidence that we got abducted. Could it have happened though? I have no idea. All I know is seeing those lights was an amazing experience. It really opened my eyes and mind to a much larger world than I saw before. I've posted this story before on other subs, but basically I went to sleep on the top bunk. Woke up because someone was shining light in my eyes. When my eyes adjusted, it was actually some kind of super bright light coming from my bedroom window and flooding the room. I walk over and see a huge triangular craft floating above my apartment. I look down because I was sure everyone on the street would be freaking out. But no, instead they all had this zombie look on their face, and drivers were just stopped at green lights and not a single soul was looking up. Suddenly the craft shined one of its other lights onto me and I don't remember anything after that. But here is the kicker. If it was just a dream, that's a logical conclusion. How the duck did I wake up on the bottom bunk? Sleepwalking and dreaming at the same time? Also, I somehow climbed down the ladder to go to sleep on the bottom bunk. At any rate, this story always kind of makes my skin crawl whenever I recount it. When I was 4, aliens came in through my bedroom window. I was terrified, but I couldn't move. My sister was asleep in the bed next to me. The aliens had big heads and big black eyes. It was as if I was in a dream, but I was very much awake. I tried to cry out, but I couldn't make a sound. The aliens left and eventually I was able to crawl into my parents' room. Completely freaked out, I didn't talk for 24 hours. My mom was very protective and patient, for which I'm still extremely grateful. It wasn't until I was an adult and heard people's description of sleep paralysis that I had an explanation of what happened to me. Such a relief to understand that what I went through was not abnormal. In spite of this knowledge, a part of me still has trouble letting go of the hallucination that happened to me that night. It's never happened again. Does sound a lot like sleep paralysis, which is ducking nuts. I have an episode about once a week on average since my teens. I like to think it's not sleep paralysis but aliens visiting me because I'm special. When I was in 6th grade, I woke up one day with 4 very small holes on my upper right thigh. It looked like the skin had been cut out in perfect tiny circles. Yet there was no blood. The circles were in a straight line and across my thigh horizontally. No more than 6 inches wide completely. I also felt very tired and couldn't remember what I had dreamt. Which is weird for me since I pretty much remember every dream I have every night. I put band-aids on them and went to school as usual. The next morning, I wake up and there are 3 new holes, right above the previous 4. I woke up once again very tired and drowsy, and was now weirded out by how symmetrical everything was that I showed my mom, who said it was most likely ant or spider bites. Next morning, 2 more holes above the previous 3, and the morning after that, 1. This is when I was seriously scared since the holes now formed a triangle that pointed to my knee and they weren't scabbing over. I was so tired and confused and was scared to go to bed. So I stayed up really late but woke up the next morning. Not even knowing when I had fallen to sleep. Only dark and then morning. When I did wake up, I was suddenly very alert. And when I threw my blanket off my legs I found all the holes completely gone. No scabbing or scarring or any trace of the circles on my thigh. I showed my mom and she just brushed it off as if they had healed like any other cut. I'm honestly not sure if this is related. But I do feel like there is a correlation. After this, I couldn't really comprehend math anymore. I had excelled at math all my life but after this incident it was like numbers had no meaning to me and I couldn't figure out simple equations. I went to an advanced school and had been learning algebra and geometry and was doing great but then it was like poof, all my math knowledge and comprehension was gone. To this day I can't even do simple addition problems without double checking them. TLDR was mostly likely probed. Aliens may have taken my math smarts with them. This technically didn't happen to me but I'll share anyway. My mom and grandma were driving in my old suburban neighborhood in the middle of the day. As they came out from passing under a large tree that hung over the road they heard a really loud noise and looked up and saw what they believed to be a plane about to crash into them. They started screaming and don't remember what happened. They didn't talk about it until months later and thought it was a dream. I don't know if I even believe them but hey, I thought I would share. Okay. So on the 24th of March, 2015 I walked out of my backyard. Around 11 PM and I live in Boring, Oregon. So honestly where I lived it was isolated. I felt like many times there is supposed to be something waiting for me in the backwoods every day. I felt like somebody wanted me to go in the woods and kept sending signals. Whether it was random sounds at night or small glares of light. I kept questioning what the heck could it be that is so obnoxious. I always go there during the day and there is nothing but branches and trees. So 11:25 I wanted to yell into the woods and ask to stop messing around but it was difficult to. I was honestly frozen and I felt paralyzed. I tried to scream for help but no words. I kept walking towards the woods and I felt something grabbed me by the arm and shoved me through the woods. Then I woke up and I thought it was a dream. I went outside of course and went where I was shoved and for the first time in my life I see branches broken and all the leaves on the ground were swept away from each other. I left around that month. And the house is still on sale at Century 21. And I plan to go see it this summer and set up a paranormal crew and wait out at night. I honestly think aliens took me and put me back to bed as an experiment. My fiancé, boyfriend at the time, had just gotten home from work. He went into our kitchen and I walked through the bedroom and into the bathroom and just stopped for a moment. I had a weird feeling. I still can't really put a name to it. So I called him and asked him to come here. I walked out of the bedroom and as soon as we came within view of each other, that was it. The next thing we knew, we were both waking up, laying side by side on our bed, flat on our backs, on top of the blankets and still fully dressed down to our shoes. 3 hours had gone by. It was so odd and disorienting. And though we had both just come to, we were extremely tired. We joked about the lost time at first. But the more we thought about it, the more weirded out we became about the whole ordeal. This isn't proof or anything. But I've never been able to think of anything else it could have been. I wouldn't say I was abducted. But I have an unexplained loss of time. I was around 10 years old. I was riding around on my bike and it was time to go home for lunch. A direct route through my town would have taken about 10 minutes but at the time I had a couple bullies that prevented me from taking that path. So no biggie, there is another scenic route that takes about 40 minutes to go around. It was early afternoon. Summertime. I take the scenic route. I make it home almost 7 hours later. The funny thing is I never noticed anything weird until I got home and it was started to get a bit darker. I pedaled all the way. And never took any other detours. Like everyone else I'm hesitant to say I was abducted. But something happened. I was about 15 at the time. I was at my grandparents' house with my parents and sister. We were about to eat dinner that my grandma had made before I left to use the bathroom. My grandma is an immigrant from the Caribbean and she always leaves her bathroom window open. It's a mix of being really frugal and just the island custom of leaving windows open for breeze. I found it very uncomfortable to pee in there with the window open, so I was always on high alert looking through it when I had to. I was peeing when I heard a noise that I honestly could never explain with words. I guess you'd call it like a high-pitched grating. Either way, it was a strange sound. And the strangest thing about it is that it sounded like it was coming from my own head. It must have been a second later that I saw a blinding light. Then everything went black. Like an instant sleep. What felt like a moment later I was back in the dining room with my family. They were sitting around at the table. Dirty plates in front of them. There was a dirty plate in front of me. I was sitting with them. I had eaten. They were talking casually. In that transition between dinner and saying goodbye to go, they were talking to me about my soccer team. And the conversation felt like we had been talking about it for a while. I could hardly speak, but no one noticed. We drove home and I went directly to sleep. I was so tired. The next morning I thought about it. I tried to figure out what it was, but it felt so overwhelming to do so that I just decided it was best not to. Something happened. I just have no idea what it was. I guess I honestly don't even want to know what it was at this point because it never happened again. And I'm okay with that. I wouldn't say I was abducted by aliens specifically, but I was definitely taken somewhere. It was more of an abduction of consciousness, if that makes sense. I don't know. It might have been my body too. It was a weird feeling I can't really explain. I was sitting at the park one day in broad daylight with 4 or 5 friends. I lived in a small community in the Midwest, so the park was empty except for us. We were talking and smoking, just cigarettes for me. Nothing that would alter my consciousness, when suddenly everyone just kind of slowed down and eventually froze completely. Myself included. I couldn't move or talk. I couldn't blink. I had to focus really hard on just breathing. And then I blacked out. I woke up alone in a dark, nearly pitch black room with 3 large illuminated screens around me. On the screens I saw the park from above. The exact spot where my friends and I were sitting. It felt like I was in that room for hours until I blacked out again. I finally came to and realized I'd been crying hysterically on the ground. The rest of my friends seemed pretty wrecked too. Like they all just experienced something equally terrifying. I was the first one of us to speak. I said I think I met God, and they all responded with similar brief statements. I remember one girl saying we're on TV somewhere, which expressed the feeling of being watched and safe and violated really well. I can't remember what anyone else said. Just the general idea of we just got taken somewhere. We didn't talk about it besides one weird short sentence each. That was the strangest part for me. That we didn't talk about it, but we all understood that we'd seen the same thing. It felt like we couldn't talk about it where they could see us. We left immediately and haven't spoken about it since. I don't keep in touch with those friends anymore, but it would be interesting to know if they felt like it was an abduction of some kind too.